Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our episode of the Teachers Run Club podcast. And I'm really happy to have two guests on this show that have been supporting the Teachers Run Club community over the last few weeks. And that is Carol Armitage, who is the founder of 80 Noir Ultra, which is a dark chocolate company based or aimed at athletes. So that's a really exciting project there because it means that as athletes, we get to eat chocolate and not feel really bad about it. So, hi, Carol, and thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And Martin Lopez. Now, Martin Lopez is a marketing and communications manager for a multi-academy trust. And if you've been following Teachers Run Club on Twitter, you may recognize him as the crazy person who ran about 2.5, 3, maybe plus marathons in 5 days during our fundraiser, the Run to Work Week. So thank you, Martin, for joining us.
No, it's a pleasure. Great to be here. Thanks, Dan.
So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to be looking at two things. One of them is something that's really important to me, and that is active commutes. And that's something Martin's going to be able to talk hopefully a lot about as well, and fitting our runs and training in around our sort of teaching schedule. And then Carol is going to be talking to us about the benefits of dark chocolate and how we can use that to aid our training and maybe as a substitute for some of the other sort of energy gels and foods that we might use. Now, before we go any further, I've already mentioned three and a half marathons in a really short amount of time. So if anyone listening, I don't want you to be put off by the fact that we're talking about these massive distances, because all of us started somewhere. And if you're listening to this thinking, oh my God, I haven't even done 5K yet, and they're talking about 100 miles in a week, don't worry, we're going to really break it down and look at how this is useful information for absolutely everyone. So I wanted to kick it off though, Carol, by asking you about the man versus mountain race that you did, because that stood out to me on your website, and I wanted to hear more.
What is it, a crazy event to try and do?
Yeah, I absolutely love crazy events and challenges, and I find when I talk, I say the word challenge way more than I should. So let's hear what you've got to say about that one.
So the Man versus Challenge, Man versus Mountain is one of the rat race challenges, which they like to, instead of just having it as a run, they like to incorporate a little bit of water always in a race. And I think they've got several of them around the country. And for me, the Man versus Mountain just shouted out, because who wouldn't want to try and run up Snowdon and back down again and then do a vertical kilometre up I think it was a mine shaft or something that you end up going up. And it just felt like something that I just had to do. You know, when you get the bit between your teeth and think, I need a challenge. So the whole year, to be honest, prior to that was I started running quite comprehensively because I needed to really, really sort out my mental health. It was sort of took a bit of a dive, and I found that running really was beginning to help. So I needed something to just keep me going and keep me a little bit more challenged. So I decided to do that, but I did not anticipate how hard it was going to be in the slightest, or how painful. To be honest, I genuinely, as much as I loved the whole thing, the coming down of Snowdon was just diabolically painful because you're permanently slamming your toes into your shoes, and all I kept thinking was, oh, these really clever people that get a size bigger in their shoes. I've never really understood why until now, because obviously, at the end, I genuinely thought I would have a pool of blood in my shoes, and I was too terrified to take my shoes off for a long time.
And did you?
And how were they? Yeah.
Do you know what? Surprisingly, they were fine. But what I found really interesting is we did the you go up Snowdon and you end up meeting so many incredible people because everybody just wants to help you. You go up as strangers and you come back as friends. That's just how I see most challenges, especially when it comes to running, because everybody is so supportive.
Yeah.
And I started to talk to somebody on the way up to Snowdon, and all you saw was just a line of people going on their way, head down to the top, going, "Are we nearly there yet? Are we nearly there yet?" And at the top, we got a lovely 360 of zero because there was fog and mist, and you just like, really? Oh, it was just,
I know that feeling. I did the Three Peaks Challenge a few years ago, and we got to the top of Snowdon, and it was just wet and foggy, and you couldn't see a thing. It wasn't a great way to end it, but that sounds amazing. And I can really appreciate what you're saying about the knees and the feet coming down. That must have been something else.
It was, and what I hadn't realised is that I tore my ATLF ligament in my foot on the way down. And so I hadn't realised. I just genuinely thought I was, pushing my toes against the front of the shoe all the time. So I was just in pain, and obviously the impact from the knees, because obviously you're going up slowly up the mountain, but then you want to try and make time up when you come down. So you're trying to leg it as fast as possible in the most safest way you can, which is almost like
Yeah, and it's pretty
galloping.
rough, isn't it? Some of the Snowdon descent is
Yeah,
pretty like rocky and loose rock as well.
it is. It was interesting because I distinctly remember at one point trying to just sort of hold on, and then I saw somebody take a tumble in front of me, so I started to slow down. And then one person, when you get to the point where your energy levels just suddenly stop and you hit a wall and you just walk and you don't know what's happened, but your body just goes into a strange, I'm running, I'm running, I'm running, I'm not running. I don't know why I'm not running, but I've suddenly stopped. And it's like your brain's still partway down the hill, but the body's just like going, nope, not anymore, not doing it. And
Yeah, that's like a weekly occurrence for me.
Because
but
Martin, you're obviously training for your own ultra distance marathons. You did a 42-mile event off the back of the Run to Work week. Is that right?
Yeah, just on Sunday gone. Yeah, as part of my training phase block. Yeah,
And you're
and
training
I did a
you're training for a
I did
100-mile race as well, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, the Beacons Way 100, which is in July, July 22nd, I think, and should hopefully be finished before the end of July.
oh, so that's all trail, isn't it? That's very, very
Yeah,
trail.
it's the mountain range from east to
Yeah,
west. So it starts in Abergavenny and
yeah.
ends in I think it's called Landerdog, is how it's pronounced. But yeah, it's about 103 miles and 6,000 meters of elevation through the whole thing, which is like 6 Snowdons or almost
Nice.
an Everest. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It's mad. And my ultra, I did the Thames Path Challenge 100k in September, and it's the complete opposite from what both of you are saying, because it is flat as a pancake, and it had its
Yeah,
own issues. Because if you've ever tried
Yeah.
to just solely run on a flat surface, I think a lot of
Oh,
people sign up for it thinking it will be an easy ultra, and it's
yeah.
anything
yeah,
but. And my brother and I ran together, and we were just praying for a bridge over the river because it meant that we could change our stride so that we could walk up some steps. Right, what we're going to do is
Yeah.
we're going to focus a bit, Carol. So after your ultra 18 or ultra, did that come about after you've done this event? Then, or was this something you wanted to do before, or how did you come to creating this company?
So it was part and parcel of it. So I'm trying to work out the long story, the short story. I launched full time in October 2020. But prior to that, I was doing a lot of research and development. So it was still out there. It just wasn't really well known. And when I did the Man versus Mountain, it's when I originally I'd created the recipe 18-hour ultra. So I actually did use my chocolate on the race or
Oh,
on the
really?
run.
oh,
Yeah, I
amazing.
just didn't tell people and I didn't promote it because I wanted to use myself as a guinea pig and I just wanted to see if it would work, what the effects would be. And I spent a lot of time just doing that across the board. And then I gradually got more and more people involved to try and see how it would impact their running, their training schedules, whether they would like the chocolate beforehand, whether they would eat it, whether they would drink it, those sorts of things. So in 2019 is when I launched at the National Running Show in January, just to see what the sort of appetite was. But there was a lot of change and evolution from January 2019 to when I finally, gave up the banking world and went full time doing this. So
And I
yeah,
haven't seen much else similar to it either. It does seem really unique.
yeah, and do you know what? I've since the age of 8, which is when I basically became ill and realized that hot chocolate was my go-to source for depleted sugar levels and stuff like that. I have always said that I would have to create my own hot chocolate because I could never ever find one that was good enough. And I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that I suddenly knew all of these amazing things about chocolate because I didn't, and I've learned that. But I just knew intrinsically that there was something always. There should be something better than what we were given. because what we were given at the time was very overloaded in sugar, and I never really liked the flavor of it. I just knew it was a good way for me to increase my sugar levels, so then I could stop, fainting and collapsing and things like that.
Yeah,
So
like a means to an end, I suppose.
yeah, but it was never something that I wanted to be able to develop the flavor and to be able to really enjoy it. And I think that's the crux for me, is being able to have that combination of something that is really good for you, for your mind and your body. It works for your training, it works for your mental health, it works for your well-being, but it also tastes amazing as well.
I
Yeah,
can
well,
agree with that, definitely, because
Thank you.
during run to work week, I did. I'm about 11 miles away from my work, so I did 2 days. I did run in, run back, cycle in,
Yep.
cycle back, run in, run back, and cycle in, cycle back. And the endurance bar I loved. I love the
Yep.
apple crumble bar as
Yep.
well. Yeah,
Apple
and
pie. Yep.
the apple pie. Sorry, and it was such a nice taste. But what I loved was you didn't have to have loads of it. You could literally break off the tiniest amount.
Yes.
And it made a huge difference. You didn't have to, wolf down loads of food.
No. No, and I think that's the point. Originally those bars were actually really small bars, but they wouldn't travel very well. They'd snap quite easily. So that's why I've made them slightly bigger. But they're really great for people who are doing endurance, but they're great for people who, just want to snack as well, because it doesn't deplete your energy levels. Whereas,
yeah,
I used to find that if I was doing a run, I would take an energy gel, and I would end up, at the moment I had to take an energy gel, I would be taking an energy gel every 30, 40 minutes after, repeatedly, because your
yeah,
energy just goes up and then it just flags. So you have to
and it
keep.
crashes. Yeah,
Yeah, and I notice with my chocolate, you don't do that. And we have tested it on people with diabetes to see what their sugar spikes are. And this is not scientific proof. This is just dabbling with people that I know, to be fair. So I'm not saying anything. But it doesn't give you the same sugar spike. So it does maintain your energy levels. So people like yourselves who are doing longer distances, you can just bite off a chunk, with the endurance bar, and it will just keep you going. It'll it'll make you work harder for longer, because it opens up your blood vessels and lets you allowed to pump more blood into your system.
Carol, what I've also really enjoyed was the fact that it didn't leave that horrible aftertaste in your mouth that you quite often get with a lot of energy gels.
Mm. And I think some of it is, I think a lot of people find it really, really difficult to begin with. When you give them that option of, oh, you can have chocolate, their immediate thought is, oh no, it's going to melt, it's going to do all of these, it's going to be worse than a sticky gel bar. But it's not, because it doesn't tend to melt, and you do get that really refreshing flavor. It's quite a crisp, almost like fruity flavor, but it's nothing that sort of sits at the back of your throat.
When you were talking about melting, I actually had one bar left, and I'd gone out for a ride with some of my sort of bike team last week, and we did 60 miles or so. And I'd taken this bar with me, and it was really hot by the time we left. By the time we got back, sorry, and it wasn't melted at all, and I was really surprised by that.
I have to admit, I was doing a lot of testing when it came to the sort of meltability of these bars, because I ended up going to Portugal, and it was like 34 to 38 degrees, and I had a pack of them in my backpack, and I was cycling, and we were in the dead of the day, and they still didn't melt. And I was just like, you know what? If they can cope with that, they can cope with British weather. They can cope with
Yeah.
most things. So I'm good with the idea that, you can put it in your pocket and it'll still be nice and crunchy by the time you get it. And that's what I quite like about the training bars, is that because of the flavors, like with the Funky Monkey, you do get the bite and the texture of the nuts. So it's something different. It's not just an energy gel which is sort of sloshing in your mouth type thing.
Yeah, 100%. I really do agree with that, and can speak for that as well. So, Martin, your commuting to work is a massive distance.
yeah,
But something I noticed when I was reading your teacher feature that you did for us a while ago was, up until, was it the 31st of December 2020, running wasn't something that was even on your radar. Is that right?
yeah. No. I mean, I'd run it a little bit before then. So like, I've always been kind of into health and fitness in some way. Played football or tennis or golf or something, and running was just something that I did occasionally if I was on holiday and there wasn't a gym, or if I was particularly trying to get fit for something, I'd do a couple of 5Ks here and there. But no, it wasn't at all. I was ill with COVID in October 2020, pretty ill, intensive care ill, and and when I came out, I sort of worked really hard walking to get sort of back to a level of fitness again. And I just noticed how quickly I improved every day. So I just, I used my heart rate as a measure, and just went out and just made sure it never went above sort of 150 beats per minute. And each day I was walking, like, started with 400 meters, then a kilometer, then a 5K, and it took like an hour and a half the first time, and the next day it took an hour and 20, then an hour, and so on. So it just really struck me how quick, in the space of 2 weeks, I went from literally in intensive care to walking 5K in about 55 minutes. And
Wow.
and it just made me think, well, I've never really enjoyed running, and I've never thought I was any good at it, but maybe if I just keep on this sort of path, that I could get into running and become okay at it. So I went for my first proper run on New Year's Eve 2020, and I literally haven't stopped since. Yeah, so I think I ran. My initial goal was to run a marathon in less than 4 hours, and by about, I think probably by early March 2021, I'd done that. So I switched my goal to do an Ironman,
Right.
a triathlon, because a friend of mine who I work with at Kimber High School. He'd already done a couple of iron distance events, and sort of, I was training with him a little bit, and I sort of thought I liked the idea of it. So I entered into a half Ironman distance in June. And the reason for the commuting came about was just because, I was all in at running. Before I started doing that, I'd been running obviously 3 or 4 months, and running pretty much every day. So when I commit to something, I like to make sure I get enough of the training in as possible. And it was just kind of getting quite stressful trying to fit in the sort of 3 cycles, the 3 runs, 3 swims. I'd never swam before. Literally, if I was a beginner at running, then swimming was a whole new thing. So I was trying to fit everything in. And I just thought to myself, I've got this canal. I'm quite lucky, as I mentioned in that teacher feature. A kilometre from my house is the sort of the bridge by the canal, and then straight down the canal, and then it's about 700 meters from the canal to my office door. So it's kind of lucky in a way. And obviously I started in May, so it was quite light mornings and light evenings. And I started, and I think I cycled in, ran home, ran back in the next morning, and cycled home. And that's how it started, just so I can get some bike miles in, and obviously with a run. But yeah, that's why it came about. And I think that it does sound a lot. I'd already done a half marathon distance like a number of times by then, but it wasn't like a simple decision to decide to cover, 2 half marathons in less than 12 hours. But I just thought, in a couple of months' time, I've got to do this half Ironman, and on the day when everyone knows that I've signed up for it and there'll be a load of people there, it'll be a bit of an insane kind of effort to do it. So I just thought, I'm going to have to start doing crazy things on a weekly basis in order to get myself ready for that in such a short time. And then, and like everything, you just adapt, don't you? And it to me, that what most people would find a crazy commute, doing that has just become completely normal. Like, it's just like last week was a big challenge, but I'm already looking at, I'm a bit gutted I didn't go for the 5 there and backs, because I think I had it. I think when I got to Wednesday, I think I had it in me, and I just sort of, I feel a bit lazy for not attempting the 5 in the end, I suppose. But that's just how I think about things.
One of the things I say to so many people is that it's all relative, and as soon as you start comparing yourself to what someone else is doing, then you're fighting a losing battle straight away. And you've gone from intensive care with COVID to signing up for a 70.3 triathlon, which is a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, followed by a half marathon. And then we have to progress to running 2 half marathons a day for the best part of a week. That's some scale up there. You've gone pretty big, pretty quick. But I think what I'm taking from this is that you've seen that you needed a challenge, you needed something to aim towards to motivate you to do your training. And I'm exactly the same.
I think so.
If I haven't got a goal that I'm working towards, then actually finding the motivation to get out and do that training is so much harder. And lockdown was really hard for me because all the races that I'd booked. I had my first triathlon booked, and I had loads of sort of half marathons booked. And as soon as they weren't there, I actually ran the least I'd ever run in a year during that sort of first COVID year, when really I had a bit of more time to be able to run. And I think that was solely because I didn't have anything to aim towards.
Yeah, like an objective, like a goal in mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, totally. And I think
100%.
it's progressed even more so. So like I've got this, the big one for me was the 100 mile that I'm going to be doing in July, but I've already got my eyes on the next thing. And I think that's important to me to know that, to not run out of steam, if you know what I mean. So I've got, but and I don't really want to mention it at the moment because I still haven't told my wife yet. But I've already got my, like, I know what's next. I know where it's going next, and I think that's just to protect the whole training thing, because
Yeah.
it would be quite easy for me to think, like, right now it's 8:30, and to think I'm going to get up at 5:30 and do a big run before work and then another big one after work. I could easily justify not doing that, but one, I actually really enjoy it, and I sort of plan each session and look forward to different elements of it. And two, I know that if I don't, that when I've signed up for something that makes people who aren't in that sort of world, which is a lot of my colleagues, think, what, how is that even possible to run 100 miles, or how can you do that many commutes each week? I know the only way that they're possible is by getting up and completing those miles. And
Mm.
with the important factor in all of this is my family, my wife, and my two boys. And the one thing that when I started this in January sort of 21 was that all of this would be done not at the expense of spending time with them and including them as much as possible. And
Yeah.
a commute is obviously an easy way, because it's it takes 40 minutes either way, each way, driving. So there's an hour and a half of my day that I'm just commuting instead, and all I've got to do is add an extra hour on, maybe. So
That's a
that's
really
what it came
important.
about.
That's a massive point, isn't it? I think for me, I'm a massive advocate for the active commute, and I've been cycling to work for probably more than 10 years now, and I do throw the occasional running as well. And over the years, I've moved further and further away from my school. So I used to only live about 4 or 5 miles, and now I'm sort of 11 miles or so away. But I've always
Yeah.
kept up that training, and I used to play ice hockey. That was my sport. I wasn't a runner or a swimmer or a cyclist at all, but when I stopped playing ice hockey, I needed something that was going to motivate me. And I wanted my wife to have the car for the kids, so it was a lot easier for me to either take the bus or to cycle to work. And I didn't want to take the bus, so I cycled. And because I'm very competitive, I'm a PE teacher, and I think that probably is part and parcel of the role. But as soon as I started doing that, I thought, oh, well, what can I sign up for? What can I do more? How can I do this more and more? And over the years, I, like you, Martin, get a lot of people who say to me, how do you do that? Or that's crazy. Or how do you spend a whole day at work after cycling? So that was going to be my question for you: is how do you deal with the rest of your day? If you know you've already ran 13 miles, you've got another 13 to do. Is there anything that you do during the day, or do you think that you're better off of having that active commute over someone who's maybe sat in their car for 45 minutes to an hour in traffic?
Yeah. No. So I think that, I mean, in terms of how active my job is, it's some days it's really active, other days it's not. So if we do all of our own videography and photo shoots, there's two or three of us in the marketing. There's three of us in the marketing team, sorry, and between us we do all the videography, all the photography for 6 high schools, a primary school, and a sixth form. So we could pretty much fill our time doing all of that. So it can be really active, and I made a commitment to, like, myself, that during that week specifically, last week, that I wouldn't do anything different, that whatever needed to be done I would do, because I didn't want this, in this silly challenge that I'd signed up for, in my eyes, to affect what I was doing in my job, obviously. So I just did everything as normal. What I probably didn't account for is how much food I would need. Obviously I had the great, obviously, nutrition from Carol, but just in terms of, like, meals, I ate my week. I took a week's worth in on Friday, which I'd eaten by, like, Wednesday afternoon. So on Wednesday and Thursday, I then, because I didn't have a car with me, I had to walk down to the village, which is about like a mile away. So I had to do another 2 mile walk round trip to get more food. So I didn't really account for that. But yeah, it can be pretty active, but I suppose the way I justify it is that when you do a training plan for a 5K or a 10K, it involves overload and adaptation and so on. And you can't really overload for a 100-miler. So I always think to myself, no amount of whatever I do in this day or week or this little block will put me in the same situation that I will be in when I'm on mile 80 and it's 28 hours into the race. So I just think to myself that no matter how tired I am or how tired I feel, that it's all good training. I'll benefit from this feeling when I'm on hour 24 or 25 of that race. So yeah, that's where I am with it really.
It is really, really interesting. And Carol, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in a minute about how we can use your chocolate with teachers and how they might use it as a substitute for coffee, or also educating children on the benefits of dark chocolate. But before we move on to that, I just wanted to say, if you are listening to this and you are training for a 5K, but you do live 12 miles away, being able to find a different way of getting in. So it might be that you park a mile away from your school, or a mile and a half, or whatever it is, and try and start to slowly introduce that walk or that run into your commute. You don't have to jump all the way in and just do the commute the whole way there and back. As colleagues that I work with, or people that I've spoken to through the Teacher Run Club, who have found loads of different ways to try and drip feed the active commute in. And I think that things like Cycle to Work scheme have been really good for that as well.
I think a few of my colleagues have done the same as well, and I think it's just changing the way you think about it, isn't it? Because it may feel a bit odd parking your car in a car park 2 miles away, or parking it somewhere and then doing that. But I think it just, once you've done it a couple of times, it becomes normal. It just makes sense, and it's a healthy way of introducing that extra exercise into your routine. I think the biggest barrier for me when speaking to people are showers and a lack of showers. And everyone's got different levels of what's acceptable and what's not. But I'm fortunate now. So we've just had a new sports hall built at the school that I'm based at. So it's got some nice showers there. But I've done different kind of commutes, and because we've got so many buildings, I've started work at many of our different buildings. And you've obviously got to recce what's available to you, but there is definitely, enough in most. I appreciate some people need to dry hair, straighten hair, etc., etc. But I suppose, I think you've mentioned it on a few of your blogs, Dan, about, if you've got PE days where you wear PE kit, can you be a bit more casual? But just for I think if you, in terms of like a hack as to how you can introduce more active commutes into your routine, would be make a list of benefits and then decide what, the benefits that are there, do they outweigh the slight inconvenience you might feel? So having to have a bit of a sort of a wash in a sink, or, if it's a walk, you may not feel as much need for a shower as you would if it was a sort of a half marathon running. But just trying to weigh up those benefits and the negatives, and then preparing as much as possible, and having, portable ways of cleaning things, and having extra kit at work, etc., is probably the biggest barrier.
I think you're right in saying that. So, like, if I'm cycling, I can take a bigger bag, I'll put more things in there, and I might take 2 sets of cycling gear, and I don't have a shower, so I am very much bird bath and in the sink, and like I said before, because I'm a PE teacher.
I suppose I was tiptoeing about it because I've got 700 colleagues, and I don't want anyone to look at me and think, this scruffy so-and-so hasn't had a bloody shower today, has he? And the truth is, sometimes that is the case.
You do have to be okay. You do have to be mindful, don't you? But there are definitely ways around it.
Just look extra smart on your other days, and people will balance it off. Yeah. Or give them chocolate. Just give your colleagues chocolate.
Bribery always works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Definitely. Or even better, just try and drag those colleagues into it as well. I get a regular. I meet up with a few colleagues now who are cycling in, and sometimes where we keep our bikes, sometimes it's just mine, and other times we've got 3, 4, or 5 bikes all piling up, and strength in numbers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that is really interesting. I think it's going to be a big part of some of these podcasts going forwards is trying to fit these runs in around the school day for teachers. But Carol, I'm really keen to talk to you about, because just conscious of time, just want to talk to you about for teachers, spreading the word of dark chocolate for children. We've just had Easter. A lot of dairy chocolate will have just been consumed by a lot of people, and it is that sort of quick sugar rush, isn't it? And I'm definitely guilty of wolfing down a Cadbury's bar or whatever after a run, you just need that sugar hit, and my kids love it too. And it is an acquired taste; it doesn't taste the same. But what are your thoughts on for teachers if they wanted to talk to their children about this and their pupils or parents likewise? What would your kind of top tips be?
I would sort of just almost break them in gently, because there is such a big difference between, especially people who like white chocolate in comparison to white chocolate, milk chocolate, dark chocolate. The majority of people understand, or they have an idea that dark chocolate is better for them, but obviously with the bitterness and the richness, it's sometimes a bit too far. So it depends whether they're hot chocolate drinkers or if they're just grab a bar and things like that. But I would, especially when it comes to kids, I would just break them in gently. I've got nieces and nephews who, from the age of 2 to 5, or 2 to 7 now, have literally just been living off 18-hour ultra. And it's what we've done is having it so it's milky, and then obviously if you have it with oat milk, it makes it a completely vegan drink entirely. But it softens the flavor, and obviously have it with honey as well, which it just softens the flavor a little bit more, so you know that you're getting all the benefits of the dark chocolate, but you're not necessarily having the sort of depth of flavor that you would initially have if you just had it pure with a hot chocolate shot. And it's just slowly introducing more and more and more into it. So even if you're baking with things, a lot of people bake with milk chocolate or baking chocolate and things like that. Just add it to that, because you obviously you use less, and it has a richer flavor, so it's better for you, and you wouldn't actually notice any difference. So it's a case of just trying to be a bit more versatile with things, I think, and just, I don't know, explaining that it is better for you. It can help reduce stress levels, anxiety, worry, and just giving it to them as a hot chocolate drink in the evening to help them go to sleep. It's a great one for sort of soothing and improving sort of melatonin levels. Not that you'd explain that, to be fair, if it was to children.
I think what you were saying there
Well, I
about
think
relaxing and in terms of your mental well-being is really important. I'm working in a primary school, it's coming up to SATs time, and well-being is the buzzword we're thinking about for not only the children but the staff as well. And a lot of time is spent working with those year sixes in particular, leading up to their SATs, ensuring that they are mentally in a good place and understand what they're doing, and they're looking after themselves and trialing these different ways of looking after their well-being, but also feeling confident enough to talk about it as well to their family or to their teachers. And I think that would be a really good experiment to see happening in some schools where children are getting a chance to try these, particularly the drinks. I think it sounds like a brilliant concept.
And I think it's interesting, because obviously I'm not trying to say that this is going to cure everything, but it's another alternative way for people to improve their well-being. So it's just adding on to the extra list of, taking a time out, doing exercise, eating healthy, getting a good night's sleep, having an 18-hour ultra dark hot chocolate for your night, and will actually help lower your stress levels. So if you are doing exams or anything like that, I mean, that's part of the issue that I used to have, is that I would get so stressed out with my exams. There have been many times where I've literally just got up, got ready, collapsed into an ironing board and missed the iron from my head by about a couple of inches, just because I got so stressed out by them all. And I would find that having just a hot chocolate, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, just helped level me out a little bit more. And it's a really simple thing, and especially when kids, a lot of kids can turn to other uses which are not necessarily helpful for them. This is just a nice wholesome way of doing it, that I think should just be promoted a little bit more.
You like for you, Daniel, in primary school, because I've got two boys, one's 7 and one's 15, and they both really enjoyed the hot chocolates like so much, because we don't we're So I'm vegan, wife's vegan. The youngest is lactose intolerant, and the oldest is just a regular. I'll say regular. I don't know the right word. Not a vegan. He's the weird one. Yeah. So he and they both really enjoyed them. But the first time the little one had the hot chocolate, just loved it. Like because he only ever really eats dark chocolate or vegan chocolate, and vegan chocolate is not great yet. But obviously, he's kind of sort of really engaged with the hot chocolate and the whole um everything that you do really. The older one, the first time he had a little sip, there was a little bit of that sort of, oh, that's a bit bitter, and he's become to like it because he's not allowed to have normal hot chocolate like late at night, and this hot chocolate is allowed to have whenever he wants it. But for him it's had to like reimagine the taste to understand and really like it. Whereas the younger one just straight in and loved it from the start.
And I think, to be honest, I think there's a lot of sort of change that people need to do, especially with the mindset as well. Because I have lots of people who are very, I like milk chocolate, I like this, but I do know that dark chocolate's good for me, so I'm going to try it. But they find, having a shot of chocolate. I mean, I have a chocolate shot every single day, and I'll either have it just plain with hot water, or I'll have it with a chai spice or something. So for me to have it with milk is quite alien. I tend to do that when I'm feeling really quite poorly. But I have it as a morning shot to really boost me. So it's like for me, it's an espresso replacement. But I know a lot of people find that just too bitter, but they know that it is so good for them. So they are trying, and their way of doing it is they'll have it and they'll add a little bit of honey or, something like that to it, or they'll use the spices, or they'll add milk to it and just sort of bit by bit try and do milk and then hot water, less milk, more hot water. And it's just slowly adapting to the flavor, because at the end of the day, it is, despite the fact that it's an 80% and it doesn't have the same bitterness attached to it, it's still a dark chocolate. So you do have
What I
to
would say, it might be a good strategy to help them adapt is send them on a half marathon and then make them eat porridge, because there is literally nothing. I have not found one post exercise meal as good as the was it the
funky monkey.
I think it's Funky Monkey
Yeah, the yellow one.
and porridge. Just wow, like
Yeah.
wow.
I saw that on
The
one of
whole
your
time you're talking,
stories.
yeah.
I said to my wife, I was
Oh,
like, that's such a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I was using the shots like you, Carol, as I got into work. So I'd get in, and I normally have a coffee, from the Nespresso machine in the morning once I'm in. But I switched it up. And I got quite a lot of comments from the teachers saying, oh, hot chocolate in the morning or whatever in the little double espresso cup. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, I did tell a massive difference, and it felt nice to drink as well. I felt like I'd earned myself this hot chocolate.
Yeah. And I think the big difference between coffee and chocolate when you have it, especially if it's just with hot water, is that you're not getting the jitters. And it's really, really strange, because for me, not chocolate, coffee is ridiculously bitter. I find it far too bitter at times. I will drink it every now and again, but I do find it bitter. And that's why I find it interesting that people find dark chocolate bitter, yet they're quite happy to have a shot of coffee. But
yeah.
the big difference that you do find if you do have a shot of chocolate is that you wake up with so much focus and clarity, but you're not sort of edgy or jittery or on sort of feeling a bit nervous or anything like that. It's just, it allows you to get to where you want to be and be sort of ready for the day. It really does help the whole sort of mind and body. And I go on about that a lot, but it does, it improves it and it gets you on it in a better place from the very get-go. Yeah, I just find coffee almost takes that away a little bit, and then you end up having to have another, and you keep having more and more, and it's a little bit of you get a caffeine overload then.
Yeah,
I mean, I listened.
it's a way of life, isn't it? I think you feel how long until you can have your next coffee, and for teachers in particular, it is very stereotypical. For teachers always wanting to get their next coffee, and I think it would be really interesting for people or teachers to be able to kind of mix it up. Sorry, Martin, I might have interrupted you a bit there.
No. What I think I was about to touch on this earlier, and that a couple of things that when you're doing endurance events that you know the nutrition side of things, they're crucial, because it's so difficult, because when you're training and you're doing like a 1 or 2 hour run, you don't have to have the nutrition, but you obviously need to practice it, because you need to
Yeah.
know how your stomach reacts, and does
Yeah.
it cause you any problems, like and you know, just with digesting it, etc. And but doing the commute week, why it was so useful for me is because I knew I had to get the nutrition right. So it was important to me that it worked well, that it digested well. And what I found in the past is that when I take too many other kinds, so like I use boom bars a little bit and some other kind of gels, is when I run in and then eat sort of regular food like maybe lentils or some hummus and bread or something like that, and then try the taking like a gel or another bar on the afternoon whilst I'm running or just before I'm going to run, I got terrible indigestion, which I don't suffer from.
Mm.
But the what I was doing in the afternoon was I was having the funky monkey in the morning with the porridge, and then about 3 o'clock I'd have a shot of hot chocolate and the blue bar, the
Yeah, the
endurance
booster bar.
bar, the booster bar. That's it, yeah.
Yep.
And I'd have no indigestion problems, which was unusual, because every single like I just got used to running like that, and just sort of you have that horrible feeling every few kilometers in your throat kind of thing. And it's just like when you have a sip of water, for example, and I just wasn't getting that. It was really good for that. And I didn't try. You know, you mentioned about the melting earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't tried any on the run, and it wasn't. I hadn't even thought of the melting an issue, but I I did bring some into work with me on the first day, because I'd forgotten to bring some bars for during the day, and when they got to there was no issue with melting at all. They were totally
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, but
Well,
yeah, so I think that how it helped me, and without causing any issues when I'd had to eat so much food whilst at work to obviously sustain the trip home was really amazing.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that I really, really wanted to focus on, because I know what it's like when you've done all the training and, fitness wise, you're absolutely fine. But then you're crippled with stomach ache, or you're feeling nauseous
Yeah,
or something because you've just had a wrong energy bar, or you've had something and it just doesn't sit well with you. So yeah, I think it's really, really important to find something that really works for you. And I know a lot of people have that same problem, and they've tried the chocolate, and it's not heavy, it doesn't sit on your stomach, so it doesn't, it just adds to your fuel as opposed to actually sitting and making you feel uncomfortable.
yeah,
which is
100%.
the last thing you need when you're going to be, going for 1.5 to 3 hours
Exactly. Yeah.
plus with any of these endurance events. Well, look, I think we've probably come to a really good point to end off here, but we've kind of jumped all over the place, and it's been really interesting. So thank you really both for your time, and mixing up the conversation between the active commute. I hope has been really beneficial for people listening and thinking about different ways that they can fit runs or rides in, or even walking into their day around the school day, and also thinking about different ways that they can mix up their fueling, and like we were just saying, making sure that you're trying these things before. You're not going to jump in and use something brand new on race day, and it doesn't matter whether you are training for a 100-mile race or you're training for your first ever 5K. All of this is really relevant. Carol, if people want to follow you on social media or find your products, where is the best place for us to find you?
So social media, we're quite prevalent on Instagram, which is 80 underscore, no, it's not, 80 noir underscore ultra. And otherwise, our website is www.80noirultra.com. So we're
Fantastic. Thank
easily
you.
found.
And Martin, you are active on both Twitter and Instagram, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say it's just a very boring update every day of how far I've run that day. So it's it's not necessary to follow me, but if you'd like to, it's Vamos underscore ultra underscore Lopez on Instagram, and on Twitter. I don't off the top of my head. It's something similar, I'm sure.
That's not
I
a
think
problem.
it's the same.
Yeah,
We'll share
yeah,
it when
at,
we post
yeah.
this.
It's at Vamos Ultra Lopez as well on Twitter, just without
All
the
right.
underscores.
Well, thank you very
But yeah,
much. And for
it
everyone,
is very much just running spam on my social media accounts.
Well, that's all right. I quite enjoy seeing it. And for everyone listening, I would really urge you to have a real think about that active commute, because it can be a really brilliant way to just build that extra activity into your day. And like Martin spoke about earlier, if you're having to fight between time with your family or other commitments outside of your work, looking at that active commute is a really good option. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you again, guys, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see lots of you again in the future. Bye-bye.